Greetings and welcome to LA Quill. Today we're diving into chapter 32 of Arianna's tale. Give it to me, Cadfael demanded, watching Darian carefully. He was seated in his throne, his face a mask of impatience. Darian's hand tightened on the golden medallion that proclaimed him heir to the throne. He hadn't realized just how important his status was to him until this very moment. The last couple of days had been hard on him, since his older half-brother had appeared out of nowhere. His gaze shifted to the man claiming to be his brother, who was probably 2 years older than he himself was. Ikon was standing just behind and slightly to the right of the king. This was the man who wanted to take from him one of the things he truly held dear. He'd had to fight long and hard to be acknowledged by his father, to be named heir. Now this man comes in and Cadfael welcomes him with open arms. Darian could understand the desire to rule, for he shared it himself. That understanding didn't lessen the anger and the hurt he experienced now. Staring at Ikon, he couldn't help but think that he looked slightly familiar. Not like their father. Like someone else. Someone Darian was sure he'd met before. Darian looked then at the man's mother, the Lady Cybil, standing at Cadfael's left. His real enemy was this woman, his father's first wife. Her claim that she'd been held by the Imperials and forced to serve as a slave might have been believable, except he'd recently met the crown prince of the Empire. Surely either Damek or Arianna would have mentioned holding the Republican queen prisoner for all these years. Damek struck him as a just and honorable man, despite the fact that he'd kidnapped Darian's sister. He didn't seem the type to withhold that kind of information. Even if he had, how likely was it that the Imperials would force one of their own to be a slave, disgraced or not? Now, Darian. Cadfael's voice hardened dangerously and his eyes narrowed. His patience was at an end. Darian returned his gaze to his father, seeing the steely resolve there. There was no point in putting off what had to be done. His father was likely to order the guard to take the medallion from him, and that was a humiliation not to be borne. He jerked the medallion roughly, breaking the chain that held it in place. His anger rising, he threw the piece of gold savagely at his father's feet. He turned on his heel and strode from the throne room. Darian, Tarius shouted, running after his friend. He'd been outside the throne room since he was never allowed within, not even now. Darian had come storming out with the look of pure fury on his face. "Darian," he said again, coming abreast his friend and grabbing his arm, forcing him to come to a stop. "What happened?" "I am no longer heir," Darian ground out. He was almost shaking in rage and longed to strike out at something. That news wasn't totally unexpected. Tarius thought for a moment. He had the beginnings of an idea. "I have to talk to you, alone. It's important." He looked at his friend, waiting for his words to penetrate the fog of rage that seemed to engulf Darian at this moment. Not that he couldn't understand the anger. He'd be angry himself in Darian's place. However, anger wouldn't serve them right now. They needed to think, and then to act. Darian got a hold of himself. It wasn't the end of the world, for all that it might feel that way right now. Facing Tarius, he did his best to make his voice sound civil. "My chambers, then." Without another word, he headed in that direction, his strides long and angry. As they walked, Darian tried to cool his anger. It wasn't an easy task. When he realized exactly why he was angry, it only made the feeling worse. While it bothered him that he was no longer heir, it wasn't enough to really make him angry, not on its own. What was really upsetting him had more to do with Arianna. She was marrying a man who, for all intents and purposes, was now Darian's superior. On their way back to the Republic, he had consoled himself with the idea that he and Damek were actually equals. That idea was really what kept him from being truly furious that Arianna was to marry the arrogant prince of the Abital Empire. Now he no longer had that comforting thought. It was more than he could stand. Tarius walked beside his friend. He had a rough idea of what was really bothering Darian, since whenever his friend spoke of his sister, he mentioned how he was her betrothed's equal. There wasn't anything Tarius could do about that at the moment, so he focused instead on what he could do, or at least what he could suggest to Darian. He was only hoping that Darian was in a listening mood. If he wasn't, there was really nothing Tarius could do. Not on his own. He had neither the authority nor the gift necessary to pull it off. They entered Darian's room, and Tarius checked to see if there was so much as a servant in the entire suite. There was no one. He returned to the entry chamber in time to see Darian pour himself a glass of brandy. Tarius grabbed the glass before Darian could take a single sip. This was not the time to get drunk. As Darian ran a frustrated hand through his blonde hair, Tarius said, "I need all of your faculties intact right now, Dar." It was a nickname he hadn't used in a long time, and it got Darian's attention. His mother, Edwina, used to call them Dar and Tar, and no one had used the diminutive of either of their names since her death. It had the effect of making Darian actually listen, which is exactly what Tarius had intended. Tarius took a seat by the hearth and waited for Darian to join him. Once they were both comfortable, Tarius thought hard about what he wanted to say. "Doesn't it strike you as odd that this Cybil person claims to have been held captive all these years, with no way to contact anyone who could help her?" he finally said. "Don't you think that either Arianna or Damek would have mentioned something, at least in passing? And do you really think that the Imperials would force the daughter of one of their own nobles to serve as a slave, no matter what crimes she had supposedly committed?" Darian sighed, letting the last of his anger flow out of him for the moment. "I have to admit I've thought of that. But it's possible Arianna didn't know, and Damek probably wouldn't have volunteered the information. His desire to wed my sister isn't enough to make him forget his duty. Besides, it's possible that Damek didn't know either, since he would only have been a small child at the time. How do we know what the Imperials would or would not do to a traitor?" "Maybe," Tarius agreed, still not buying it. "Think about this. If the mages who took her were powerful enough to make everyone think she was dead and hold her for 25 years, how did she escape them?" He shook his head. "From what we've seen, I doubt the Imperials are easy to fool. I think that it would have been pretty close to impossible to escape at all. Arianna tried it often enough, and she failed. And how did Cybil cross into the Republic? The ice shelf? The gully? I highly doubt it. Maybe she used a boat? How? It's not likely that the Imperials would allow her to borrow one of their ships, and ours don't sail up north. She hasn't explained how they came here. It makes me suspicious." "What are you saying?" Darian asked, trying to see where this conversation was leading. "Only that I don't buy their explanation." He held up a hand to forestall any protests. "I have no doubt that they are who they say they are. I'm sure they've already had the mages compare the blood markers, and that Ikon really is your father's son. But that's the only thing I'm sure of. Everything else they claim just rubs me the wrong way. Something isn't right about this whole thing." Darian nodded. He'd felt much the same, but had passed it off as jealousy. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe there really was more to it than that. "What do you suggest?" he asked, knowing that his friend would have a plan. Tarius looked at him like he was the world's greatest idiot. "Have you forgotten that your sister is to marry the heir to the Imperial throne? Send her a message. Detail everything we know. She's marrying into their royal family. Surely, if she asks, they will tell her the truth." He smiled. "We may yet get to the bottom of this, and maybe you'll even get the throne, in the end." Such talk bordered on treason, but it was only the two of them. Darian wasn't likely to have him arrested for it. Slowly, Darian nodded again. "I can send a bird. That's what I was going to do when we got the crystal. No reason I can't do that now." "Exactly," Tarius said, glad his friend understood. Darian stood and went to his writing desk. He hadn't used it much since his father had refused to grant him any real duties, and the only people he would write to were Arianna and Tarius. The latter was always with him anyway, and the former, well, better not to think about that. Now he was glad that despite its lack of use, the servants had kept it well stocked. He found the pen and paper he was looking for and began writing. As soon as he got the chance, he'd send word to Arianna. "Do you think Darian will cause any problems?" Cybil asked her husband carefully. She had no intention of revealing exactly how much his answer mattered to her. The young pup was the only thing that might disrupt her plans. Cadfael shook his head. "Darian will do as I command. He might not like it, but he will obey me." The king was sure of that much about his younger son. Well, that's good. He seems a decent boy. She waited for a reaction. The king ran an annoyed hand through his hair. It was now standing on end, but he didn't care. He's that treacherous Edwina's son. If I'd known I'd sired a son by you, I never would have remarried. Cybil waited until everyone except Ikon left the throne room. Then she kissed her husband, deeply. She was more than satisfied by his reaction. He desired her just as much as he had 25 years ago. He would be putty in her hands now, just as he had been then. It was exactly what she had expected. Well, she said, withdrawing her lips slowly, I suppose I should go rest. I assume there will be a coronation ceremony for Ikon. Cadfael nodded, wishing he could go back to her chambers with her. She was still as dark and beautiful as he remembered, even though 25 years had passed since he'd last seen her. There wasn't a hint of gray in her black hair. She was lovely. Of course, this evening I will confirm him as heir. Cybil smiled and left the room. Ikon trailed after her. Cadfael watched with pride. And that's our tale from L.A. Quill today. If you enjoyed this chapter, let me know your favorite moment in the comments. Until next time, may your stories always be magical.